The wounded giant. Outside her cabin. The rain was heavy that night. It hit the roof of Lila's small research cabin like 1,000 tiny drums. Wind howled through the trees, and thunder shook the skies. Lila, a quiet and nerdy human girl, sat at her desk reading an old book about alien species. Her glasses slid down her nose as she took notes in her journal. She loved silence, science, and stars. But that night was not silent. Suddenly she heard something. A deep growl. It was not thunder. It was something else. She froze. The sound came again. Closer, deeper, sadder. Lila stood up slowly and walked to the window. Her heart beat fast. Her hands shook. She pushed the curtain aside and looked out into the storm, and there, it stood. Massive shadow near the edge of the forest, taller than her house. It moved slowly, dragging one leg. Lightning flashed, and for just a second, Lila saw its full shape. Her mouth dropped open. It was an alien dragon, thick black and silver scales. Long wings torn and wet, glowing eyes like fire, and it was in pain. Lila stepped back in fear. Every book she read said these creatures were wild, dangerous, unpredictable. They called them sky burners because they could breathe plasma fire and destroy entire ships. But this one, it wasn't attacking. It wasn't roaring. It was limping, hurt, cold, and it came to her? Why? The dragon suddenly lowered its huge head and let out a deep groan. Lila could see it clearer now. There was something metal in its paw, long and sharp, like a nail or spike. Her brain raced. Should she hide? Run? But something inside her said no. She grabbed her flashlight, opened the door, and stepped into the rain. The wind slapped her face. Mud soaked her shoes, but she walked forward one slow step at a time. The dragon didn't move. She stopped a few feet away, its giant eye turned toward her. She could feel its heat, see its pain. "You're hurt," she whispered, even though she knew it might not understand. It let out a low breath, like a soft growl mixed with a sigh. Not angry, not scared, just tired. Her eyes moved to the paw. A thick, rusted metal nail was stuck deep in the flesh. Blood mixed with mud and rain. She knelt down slowly. "I won't hurt you," she said, more to herself than to it. The dragon raised its paw slightly, a heavy movement. It was letting her see. Letting her help? She reached into her tool bag and pulled out strong pliers. Her hands trembled as she touched the nail. The dragon didn't flinch. She pulled. The dragon roared. The trees shook. Birds flew from the forest. Her heart nearly stopped. She fell backward in the mud. But the dragon didn't attack. It looked down at its paw. The nail was out. The bleeding slowed. Lila crawled back, thinking it might be angry. But instead the dragon lowered its head even more, and did something she never expected. It bowed. Its glowing eyes met hers, calm and quiet. She was too stunned to speak. The great beast, the so-called monster, was showing respect. To a human girl? Then, slowly, the dragon turned around. It limped back into the trees, one heavy step at a time, vanishing into the storm. Lila stood there in the rain, soaked and shivering. "What just happened?" she whispered. Was it a dream? Did she imagine it? She looked down at the bloody nail in her hand. No, it was real. The sky burner came to her. It trusted her. It let her pull out its pain. And then it left. But something in her heart told her this was not the end. It was just the beginning. A nail in the paw. The morning after the storm was quiet. The trees were wet. The air was cold. A thick fog covered the forest like a soft blanket. Lila sat on her cabin steps, holding the rusty nail in her hand. It was longer than her finger, sharp at one end, bent and covered in dried blood. Her mind kept going back to last night. Glowing eyes, the giant paw, and the dragon's soft bow before disappearing. She still didn't understand why it came to her. Was it luck? Was it a trap, or was it something more? Lila placed the nail into a glass jar and sealed it tight. Then, she pulled out her journal and began to write everything down. Alien dragon approached at night, injury. Large iron nail in front paw. No signs of aggression. A loud touch. Roared in pain but didn't attack. Behavior, intelligent. Possible trust? Her fingers paused. Trust. It felt too strange. Too big a word for a creature that could crush her like an ant. Still, something deep inside her believed it. That night wasn't random, and that dragon wasn't just any beast. 3 days passed. Lila went back to her studies. She ran small tests, scanned the forest, and collected samples. But her eyes kept drifting toward the trees. Every crack of a branch made her heart jump. Every shadow outside made her wonder. Was it him again? Then on the 4th night she heard something. Scratch, scratch, thud. She ran to the window and looked outside. Fog again. Dark shapes moved. For a second she thought she saw eyes. Orange, glowing. She opened the door, slowly. Stepped out, with her flashlight. "Is that you?" she whispered. No answer, just wind and leaves. Then, a breath. Warm, deep. She turned, and there it was. The alien dragon stood just outside the clearing, its body covered in scratches, scales chipped, its injured paw now wrapped with fresh vines tied like a bandage. Had it treated itself? Her flashlight moved over its body, and for the first time she saw something strange. Symbols, carved into the scales of its side. Not by nature, by hand. Glowing faintly in blue light like writing, Lila gasped. "These are marks," she said. "Words?" The dragon lowered itself onto the ground, watching her. Lila stepped closer, heart pounding. The beast stayed still. She crouched near its paw again. The injury was better, but not healed. Some infection had started. The old nail wound was dark around the edges. "I need to clean this," she said softly. The dragon made a low sound. Not angry, not scared. Ready. She pulled out her med kit. Slowly, carefully, she poured clean water over the wound. The dragon twitched but didn't move. Then she applied ointment and covered the area with cloth strips, tying them tight. Her hands moved gently, like she was caring for an injured friend. "Done," she whispered, stepping back. The dragon looked at her. Then, slowly it turned and walked a few steps toward the trees, then stopped, looked back, and waited. "Wait. Do you want me to follow you?" It didn't growl. It didn't move forward again. It just stood there, watching her. Lila looked down at her tools, then at the open forest. This was crazy. This was stupid. She was just a nerdy girl in glasses. But she took a breath and walked forward. The dragon led her through thick trees, past glowing plants and strange stone towers deep in the woods. She'd never seen these parts before. After almost an hour, they reached a wide hill with sharp rocks and an old fallen tree. And behind it, a cave. Dark, cold, hidden by roots. The dragon stepped aside, letting her go first. Lila hesitated. Why bring her here? Why show her this? But she stepped in. Her flashlight lit up the inside and she gasped. There were other dragons, 3 of them, smaller, weaker, shaking. One was barely breathing, and all had deep wounds, nails, cuts, ropes around wings. They were hurt, like him, like someone had trapped them. She stepped closer and whispered, "Who did this to you?" Behind her, the dragon growled, not at her, but at the memory. Then it scratched something into the ground with its claw. A symbol, a shape. She didn't understand. But one thing was clear. This dragon didn't just want help for himself. He brought her here to save the others. And Lila realized with a chill, this was bigger than one injury. It was a warning. And maybe a mission. The moment of pain. And trust Lila couldn't sleep that night. Even after she returned from the hidden cave, her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Her eyes kept seeing those wounded alien dragons, thin, broken, barely breathing, and still, the one who brought her there, the largest one, had not once acted like a monster. He had shown her the truth. He had asked for help. Now, lying in her bed, she stared at the wooden roof of her small cabin. "These aren't beasts," she whispered to herself. "They're survivors." She turned her head and looked at the jar beside her bed. Inside it, the bloody nail from the dragon's paw sat like a silent reminder. She had pulled that from his body, and somehow that moment had created something between them, something no science book ever taught her. Trust. The next morning, Lila packed her bag carefully: water, bandages, scanners, herbs, tools. She didn't know what she'd find in that cave today, but she couldn't go empty-handed. When she stepped outside, she froze. The big dragon was already there, waiting. Its massive head turned as she approached. A low, soft sound rumbled from its chest, something between a purr and a growl. Lila gave a shy smile. "You're early." The dragon lowered its head, allowing her to place her hand on its snout. Its scales were cool to the touch. Underneath that hard surface, she could feel warmth, life. Without another word, it turned and led her back into the forest. The cave looked darker today, colder. One of the smaller dragons, the youngest one, was lying on its side, barely moving. Its wings were torn, its eyes half closed. A wire was wrapped tightly around one leg. Lila rushed forward. She knelt beside the creature, checking its pulse, feeling its breath. Still alive, but weak. "I need to cut this," she whispered, pulling out small wire cutters. She worked fast but carefully. The young dragon trembled, its breathing sharp. "It's okay," she said again and again. "I'm here." The big dragon stood, behind her, unmoving, watching. Then suddenly, a noise. Footsteps. Voices. Not human. Lila's head jerked up. She grabbed her scanner and activated silent mode. 2 red dots, moving toward the cave. Poachers? Hunters? The dragon looked at her sharply, its body tensing. It gave a low snarl, but she raised her hand. "No," she whispered. "If they see us, they'll kill you. All of you." Lila reached into her bag, pulled out a sound blinder, a small device that hid movement through acoustic waves. She activated it and tucked it under a rock. Outside, the footsteps got closer. Closer. Then stopped. Silence. She and the dragons didn't breathe. For a full minute, nothing moved. Then, the sound slowly faded. The red dots on her scanner disappeared. Gone. Lila exhaled. The danger passed, for now. When she turned back, the big dragon was kneeling. He lowered his body fully onto the cave floor, head low, wings tucked, eyes soft. Lila blinked in confusion. "Why are you—" And then she realized. He was offering something. Not just safety, not just trust. Submission. He was showing her that he would not hurt her, that he belonged to her protection now. The alien dragon, the feared sky burner, was giving her full trust. The moment was quiet. Sacred. Lila stepped forward and placed both her hands on its giant head. Her fingers moved across the carvings in his scales. Some were old, some were fresh, some were names, she realized, written in an alien language, and one symbol had been scratched near his neck, glowing faint blue. It meant chosen. Her heart skipped. "I didn't choose you," she whispered. "You chose me." The dragon made a soft sound. Not sad, not angry. Something closer to peace. She sat beside him as the younger dragon slept, her back against the warm scales of the giant who had once come to her door, wounded and alone. Now, he was family. Secrets in the scales. Lila couldn't stop thinking about the markings on his body. When she touched them, they pulsed softly, like gentle blue lights under the surface. Some were small and curved, others sharp like blades. At first, they looked like scars, but now she knew better. They were symbols. They were stories. And each one had meaning. The big dragon, who still hadn't told her his name, stood calmly near the mouth of the cave. His tail moved slowly. He looked at her like he was waiting for something. Lila pulled out her old notebook. She sat on a flat stone, placed the lamp beside her, and opened the first page. "Okay," she whispered. "Let's see what you're trying to tell me." She began to sketch the glowing patterns on his scales. Hours passed. The small dragons slept beside each other in a pile of wings and tails. The big one stayed quiet while she worked. Sometimes he moved a little to let her see his other side. Not once did he growl or flinch. Lila was amazed. A creature that could burn down a forest was sitting still for her like a student in class. She gently traced a line near his shoulder. There under the lights she found something odd, a circle within a circle. She paused. "I've seen this," she whispered. It matched an old symbol used by alien cartographers, a kind of star map. She checked her device, tapped the design into her scanner. It matched a sector far away from Earth, a dark zone with no colonies. "What's there?" she asked softly. The dragon made a low, rumbling sound and looked toward the cave wall. Lila stood and followed his gaze. A corner of the cave had sharp claw marks, scratches made by a dragon's talon. She stepped closer and gasped. More symbols. More maps and one clear image carved into stone. A ship, not a human one. It was a cage ship, a slave ship. That's when it hit her. These dragons, they were taken, she whispered. Hunted. Trapped. Shipped off. She turned and looked at the sleeping young dragons. They escaped. The big dragon nodded slowly. Her heart hurt. These weren't wild monsters. They were victims, hunted for sport or money, and somehow they made it back to this planet. She walked back to the large dragon and sat beside him. "Why me?" she asked. "Why did you come to my cabin that night?" He tilted his head. Then, with his massive claw, he began to scratch something into the dirt. A figure, small, with glasses, a book in one hand. Her. He drew her, and next to the figure he carved the same glowing circle within circle shape again. "Me, and the place you came from?" she asked. The dragon blinked slowly, a soft confirmation. Her mind raced. Could it be? Could she be connected to them? Then she remembered. Her father was a space engineer. Before he disappeared in deep space, he told her stories of creatures in pain, of experiments, of dragons in cages. He always told her to stay kind, even when others are cruel. Her hands trembled. "Did you know him?" she asked. The dragon didn't answer with words, but turned slightly, revealing a marking on his wing. It was almost faded, a symbol of a man, with the same glasses and the same book. Lila broke into tears. "My father helped you. That's why the dragon had come. Not because of chance, not because of fear, but because she was his daughter, and now it was her turn." That night, as the wind howled outside the cave, Lila sat between 3 sleeping dragons, her hand on the big one's warm back. She now understood the truth carved in their scales. They weren't just telling history, they were passing down a message. "Help us. Finish what your father started," and Lila made a silent promise as she closed her notebook. Will. The hidden cave. Beneath the mountain, the next morning, the forest felt colder. Lila stood at the edge of the cliff near the cave, staring at the distant mountains. Her thoughts were heavy. She now knew the dragons were more than just wild creatures. They were intelligent, wounded, and hiding. But from what? Why had no one told her this truth? Behind her, the large dragon stepped forward. His steps were slow, but steady. He wasn't just leading her anymore, he was guiding her. Lila looked up at him and whispered, "There's more, isn't there? More than this cave." The dragon gave a soft growl. Then, with a sudden leap, he stretched his wings and rose into the sky. She gasped. His wings weren't fully healed, but he was strong enough now. He circled above her, then dipped low as if calling her to follow. Lila ran back into the cave and grabbed her pack. She had no wings, but she had legs, and questions that needed answers. The dragon led her on foot through thick woods, across rocky hills, and deep into the valley beyond the forest. It took hours. The path was rough, and strange sounds echoed from the trees, growls, snaps, whispers on the wind. Twice she thought she saw red eyes watching her from the bushes, but the dragon stayed close. Nothing dared attack her while he was near. As the sun began to fall behind the mountains, they reached a steep rock face. It looked like a dead end. "Why did you bring me here?" she asked, panting. The dragon stepped forward and pressed his claw against a stone. Click. Part of the wall moved. Stone scraped against stone. A narrow entrance opened, hidden so well, no human would ever see it. Lila's eyes widened. The dragon ducked and entered. She followed, her flashlight shaking in her hand. Inside, the air changed. Cooler. Deeper. Ancient. The walls weren't natural. They were carved. Not by machines, but by claws. Generations of dragons had dug these halls with their own bodies. Symbols were everywhere. On the ground, the ceiling, the walls. Dragons drawn in circles. Stars, chains, fire. And one symbol repeated again and again. The hunter's mark, a spiked chain around a wing. "This is where they came after escaping," Lila whispered. "This is their sanctuary." They reached a wide chamber deep inside. Glowing crystals lit the room with soft purple light. At the center was a pool of clean water, and near the edge, bones. Lila stepped closer. She saw dragon bones, and human bones too. The dragon stepped beside her, lowering his head. A soft moan came from his throat. "This is where they died," she realized. "The ones who didn't make it." Her heart ached. Then she saw it. On the far wall, a symbol carved into the stone, old and faded, her father's name. Her legs gave out. She dropped to her knees. Tears filled her eyes. He had been here. He'd helped them escape. Helped them build this place. And when the hunters found them, he died protecting them. She touched the symbol and whispered, "I'm here now. I won't let what you built be forgotten." The dragon gently nudged her shoulder with his snout. It was his way of saying, "We remember him too." Then suddenly a loud echo filled the cave. Lila turned fast. Her flashlight flicked toward the entrance. Voices, multiple, not dragon, not friendly, alien hunters. They had tracked them here. The dragon stood tall, growling deep in his chest, but Lila grabbed his wing. "No," she whispered. "They expect you to fight. That's what they want." She pulled out her scanner, fingers flying across the buttons. She activated her signal jammer. Then quickly, she pulled a small flare from her bag and whispered, "I hope this works." She lit it and threw it down the side tunnel. The burning light bounced and rolled, drawing the enemy voices away from them. Seconds passed like hours. The footsteps chased the sound. Gone. Silence. Lila collapsed in relief. The dragon looked at her with new eyes. She wasn't just a healer now. She was a protector, like her father. As they rested in the hidden cave, Lila looked at the walls once more. There was so much pain, so many memories, but also hope. And now the dragons had her, and she had them. The truth about the dragon hunters. The night was quiet, too quiet. Inside the hidden cave, the dragons rested. Their eyes were half closed, their breathing calm. But Lila couldn't relax. She sat near the crystal-lit wall, notebook in her lap, hands shaking. The enemy had found the path. Not by accident, by tracking them. She stared at her scanner, her mind spinning. Something didn't feel right. The flare had bought them time, but not safety. She turned to the big dragon. "You said you escaped," she whispered. "But from who? Who's hunting you now?" The dragon stared at her, then moved. He walked deeper into the shadows of the cave. Lila followed. He stopped at an old metal box hidden behind a rock slab. It was human-made. Rusty, locked tight. The dragon tapped it gently with his claw. Lila pulled her tools from her bag. She worked fast, nervous. The lock clicked open. Inside were dusty documents, broken communication chips, and a photo. Her heart stopped. It was her father. Standing beside two dragons, and behind them, military ships, with a human logo. She picked up a data slate and activated it. The screen flickered. Project Burnfall. Classified. Alien dragons captured for weapon testing. Subject Alpha escaped. Terminated Dr. Lorian Hayes. All field agents ordered to recover asset at any cost. Lorian Hayes, her father. Lies, she whispered. They blamed you for killing him. The dragon growled low, as if confirming it. Lila's breath caught in her throat. The hunters weren't aliens, they were humans. Her own kind. The ones who funded the research, who turned dragons into lab experiments. Weapons, slaves, and her father had betrayed them to help the dragons escape. They called it treason. They called it death. Suddenly, a sharp buzz echoed through the cave. Her scanner lit up. 3 red signals. Fast. Close. Lila backed away from the metal box. "They're here." The big dragon moved in front of her. Then came the sound. Boots on stone. Voices. Cold. Cruel. Signals inside. "Orders are clear. Take the girl. Kill the beasts." She covered her mouth, trembling. They weren't here to talk. The dragon gave her a long look, then moved, quiet as shadow. Silent as a ghost. Lila wanted to run, but something inside her said no. Not this time. She dug into her bag and pulled out her father's old comm piece. Still working. She synced it to her signal jammer and began rerouting her coordinates. If she could confuse their systems, just long enough. The first soldier stepped inside the main cave chamber. His helmet turned. He saw the young dragons, raised his blaster. But before he could fire, a massive roar shook the cave. The big dragon slammed into him from the side, throwing him into the wall. Another came in, shooting wildly. Lila ducked behind a stone, sparks flying above her head. She activated the jammer pulse. Their comms screeched. The soldiers staggered, confused, and that's when the smallest dragon, the youngest one, charged from behind and knocked one off his feet. Even wounded, it had fire inside. Lila crawled across the chamber, reached the second soldier, and smashed his wrist pad with a rock. "No more tracking," she muttered. Then she felt it. A hand grabbed her from behind. One more soldier. He dragged her to her feet, gun to her head. "Give me the creature, girl." Lila didn't cry. She didn't beg. She looked him dead in the eyes and said, "He's not a creature. He's family." The dragon roared again, and fire lit the entire cave. But it wasn't aimed at the soldier. The fire hit the ceiling. Rocks began to fall. Lila elbowed the soldier and dove aside as the cave shook. Dust filled the air. The soldier ran. And then, silence. She coughed and stood slowly. The big dragon stood tall in the middle of the smoke. Wings stretched, body burned but unbroken. He looked at her, chest heaving. And for the first time, Lila didn't feel fear. She felt power. Not from the dragon. From both of them. Together. As morning light spilled through cracks in the stone, Lila gathered the fallen comm devices, evidence, proof. We'll show the world, she whispered. What they did. What you really are. The dragon stepped beside her. He didn't bow this time, and she didn't step back. They stood as equals now. Not prey and predator, not girl and beast, but allies. She became their voice. The world outside the mountain was waking up. The sun rose over the trees, warm and golden. But Lila didn't feel peace. She stood just outside the hidden cave, her face dusty, her hands scraped, her clothes torn, but her eyes were sharp. Behind her, the dragons waited. They no longer hid in fear. They waited to see what their human would do next. Yes, their human. Lila Hayes, daughter of the man who tried to save them, now the only one left who could finish what he started. Her pack was full of evidence now. Broken military gear, a bloodied photo of her father. The data slate marked Project Burnfall. And most important, the truth carved into the dragon's scales. Symbols of pain, symbols of trust, symbols that proved the dragons had never been monsters. Lila knew she had to go back, to the outpost, to the network, to the humans who still believed. Dragons were wild killers, she would show them everything, but she also knew the risk if she failed. The hunters would return, stronger, crueler, and next time, they wouldn't stop with just tracking. They'd destroy the entire mountain. They'd erase the dragons forever. The big dragon stepped beside her. He bent his head low, his breath warm. On her arm, his eyes glowing and ancient, held no fear. Only one question. Are you ready? Lila placed her hand on his snout and whispered, I am. Hours later, the outpost lit up with alarms. A massive shape was flying in the sky. A dragon, and on its back, a girl with glasses and a satchel full of secrets. Soldiers aimed their guns, civilians screamed, but she didn't attack. She didn't shout. She landed right in the middle of the human square, and she raised her voice. Stop! They froze. Her voice echoed through the courtyard. The dragon behind her stood tall, wings spread wide. But it did not roar. It did not burn. It stood still. Lila held up the broken comlink. This is the truth you've been hiding. She tossed the photo down, held up the data slate. I know what Project Burnfall is. I know what you did to them, the crowd whispered. Someone gasped. One of the scientists stepped forward. Who are you? I'm Lila Hayes, she said. Daughter of the man you called a traitor. She held up her notebook, shaking it in the air. My father saved them, and now I will too. Security came running. Guns pointed. But suddenly, something unexpected happened. A child stepped forward. A small human boy from the crowd. He reached out and touched the dragon's claw. The dragon lowered his head, eyes soft. The boy laughed. The crowd stared in silence. And then, they lowered their weapons. One by one. Not because Lila forced them, not because of fear, but because they saw the truth. The dragons were not monsters, they were like humans, injured, scared, and finally, free. Over the next few weeks, everything changed. Lila told her story to the world. She shared her father's journals. She translated the symbols in the scales. People cried, some apologized, others joined her. The mountain became protected land. The dragons were no longer hunted. They were studied, respected, not for weapons, but for wisdom, and at the center of it all stood Lila, the nerdy human girl who once lived alone in a forest cabin, now known across the galaxy as the voice of the Skyburners. One evening, she returned to the cave. The big dragon waited there. As always. He lowered his head again. She smiled. Are you ready? She asked. This time he nodded. Together they walked into the stars. Not as human and beast, not as hero and monster, but as family.